GDP. You hear this term thrown around all the time, right? It's one of the most important numbers in all of economics. I mean, everyone from world governments to investors on Wall Street watch it like a hawk. But what does it actually mean? Okay, let's dive in and really break it down.
So you're watching the news and you hear the anchor say something like, the economy grew by 2% last quarter. It sounds official, it sounds important, but it's also kind of abstract. What exactly is the economy, and how do they know it grew by precisely 2%? Well, the answer to both of those questions comes down to three little letters: GDP. All right, so to really get a handle on GDP, let's start with a simple analogy. Probably the easiest way to wrap your head around it is to think of it as the total price tag for an entire country.
Okay, so here's the textbook definition. Gross domestic product is the total value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time frame. Now, a couple of words in there are super important. Final is key. It means we only count the finished product, like a brand new car, not the steel, the rubber, and the glass that went into making it. That way, we're not counting the same value over and over. And within a country is also crucial. It doesn't matter who owns the factory. If that car was built here, it counts towards this country's GDP. Yeah, so just imagine if you could put a price tag on every single new car, every cup of coffee sold, every haircut, every new building, everything that was produced in a country in 1 year. And then you added all of that up, that gigantic final number, that's the GDP. It's the ultimate measure of a nation's total economic output. So how in the world do economists actually calculate a number that massive? It's not like they go around counting every single coffee. Instead, they've got a pretty straightforward recipe that uses 4 main ingredients. Those 4 ingredients are consumer spending, business investment, government spending, and finally, net exports. And right away, you can't miss that giant purple slice, right? Consumer spending is by far the biggest engine of most modern economies. So let's break down what each of these pieces actually is. All right, first up, and the big one, is consumer spending. We call this C, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's all the money that you, me, and everyone else in the country spend on stuff. Your groceries, that new phone, your Netflix subscription, the gas in your car, it's all in there. It's the biggest piece of the pie.
Then we've got business investment, or I. Now, this isn't what you might think. It's not about buying stocks and bonds. For GDP, investment means companies spending money on things that will help them produce more in the future. Think about a construction company buying a new crane, a tech startup buying new laptops for its developers, or a company building a brand new factory.
And of course, there's government spending, or G. This is all the money the government spends on public goods and services. We're talking about building new roads and schools, funding the military, and paying the salaries of public employees like teachers and firefighters. But one quick note, this doesn't include things like Social Security payments because that's just money moving around, not a payment for a new good or service being produced. And the last piece of the puzzle is net exports, or NX. This one's all about how we trade with the rest of the world. It's pretty simple. We take the total value of everything we sell to other countries, our exports, and then we subtract the total value of everything we buy from other countries, our imports. We have to subtract imports because that money is leaving our economy, and it was probably already counted when a consumer or a business bought that imported product. And when you put it all together, you get this famous little formula, C plus I plus G plus NX equals GDP. You just add up all the spending from consumers, businesses, and the government, you adjust for trade, and there you have it, the gross domestic product.
Okay, so now we know what GDP is and how it's calculated, but so what? Why is this one number so important? Well, because it acts like a speedometer for the entire economy.
See, the huge number itself, in the trillions of dollars, isn't what people are usually talking about. What really matters is how fast that number is changing. That's the percentage you always hear on the news. Is our economy speeding up, or is it slowing down? A positive number means the economy is growing, it's expanding, but a negative number means it's actually shrinking or contracting. And that change, that percentage, has a huge impact on all of our lives. When GDP is rising, businesses feel confident. They hire more people, they build new things, and wages tend to go up. The whole economy feels healthy. But when GDP is shrinking, especially for a few months in a row, we call that a recession. Businesses get nervous, they might start cutting back, and sadly, people can lose their jobs. So GDP is obviously a super useful tool. But, and this is a big but, it's not perfect.
Just like a receipt from a restaurant tells you how much you paid, but not if you actually enjoyed the food, GDP leaves a lot of important things off the final bill.
You know, GDP is great at measuring the size of the economic pie, but it tells you nothing about how that pie is sliced up. It doesn't measure income inequality. It also completely misses tons of valuable work that doesn't have a price tag, like a parent staying home to raise their kids. And sometimes, GDP can actually go up for bad reasons. Think about it. Cleaning up after a natural disaster costs a lot of money and adds to GDP, but nobody would say the country is better off because of it. Okay, so here's a really important, kind of tricky question. If you hear on the news that GDP grew by 5%, does that automatically mean the country produced 5% more cars and served 5% more cups of coffee? Well, not necessarily. And the reason why is a little thing called inflation. This brings us to two different flavors of GDP. First, there's nominal GDP, which measures everything using today's prices. So let's say a tiny economy produces just one apple and it costs $1. The nominal GDP is $1. If next year it still only produces one apple, but the price of that apple inflates to $2, then nominal GDP doubles to $2. It looks like 100% growth. But did we actually produce anything more? Nope. And that's exactly why economists focus on real GDP. It adjusts for that inflation by using a constant set of prices from a base year. It gives us the real picture of whether our output actually grew. All right, let's zoom out and put all these pieces together. What's the big picture here? What's the final verdict on GDP? I really love this analogy because it captures the idea perfectly. GDP is an essential gauge on our economic dashboard. It tells us how fast we're going, our economic speed, and that's absolutely vital information. But it can't tell you if the ride is smooth for everyone in the car, if the engine is polluting the environment, or if we're even headed in a direction that makes us happy. So at the end of the day, what should you remember about GDP? It is an absolutely powerful and essential tool. It gives us a quick, standardized snapshot of a country's economic health. But it's just that, a snapshot. It's one angle, one photo. And no single photo can ever capture the whole complex story of a nation. And that really leaves us with a final, pretty big question, doesn't it? If GDP is just the speedometer on the dashboard, what other gauges should we be checking? Things like the unemployment rate, the inflation rate, or maybe even measures of happiness and well-being. What else do we need to look at to get the full story of where our economy and our society is really going?
Share, like, comment, and subscribe.